the poetry of the piano. And the secret of great poetry reading is that variable tone of voice that an actor can bring to words. And in music, you can do a variable tone on a violin. You can get louder and softer on the same note. You can do it on a saxophone. But on the piano, once you've played the note, you can't even control the speed at which it dies away. All you can do is play the next note louder, or perhaps softer. And you can choose your moment. You can play the note sooner or later. And so here we're going to be exploring how to make a melody expressive at the piano by changing the time. I always think that melody is like Pavarotti on speed. But are there ways that we could make the tune even more expressive, perhaps by distorting the time, by playing sooner or later? And in fact, are there ways in which we can surprise or satisfy the listener by doing that? In 1756, the English composer Charles Avison wrote down two of the things that we don't want from our audience when we're performing to them: disgust and indifference, or want of attention. What we want from our audiences is surprise or satisfaction. And so the clue to everything that we want to do is to lead the audience to expect something, and then either to satisfy it or to surprise them. Now, the reason I'm starting off with this is because there's a marvellous surprise. And there's a very unexpected C natural in this, which is a surprise. So let's get into that a little bit. Let's go from this sort of B major-ish bit here. And then when we get here, don't hurry, but surprise us.
Okay.
The way that it speeds up that little bit before. I like that. Now, I want you to try one thing, and this is just a bit controversial, a bit subtle, but what if you lengthen that one already?
Okay.
So that you slow down into your surprise a little bit more. So if, what I'm hoping, Sophie, will do is just keep us waiting that moment longer and see if it affects it. We still need the same run, I think. Too much. Yeah. One always overshoots. One always overshoots. It's a terrible thing to try and react, but good, good. Now do it perfectly. Thing to play with there. Now the other moment of surprises is when this, which sounds so like a dominant seventh, that chord we tend to think is going to go, do we not? But Mendelssohn knows that it's not a dominant seventh. It's what I like to call a dominant seventh in drag. It's a German sixth. That's what it is. And so you'll hear that so far from going, it's going to do something very different. Where should we go from? Then you can surprise us with it. Or, of course, what you might prefer to do is to satisfy us.
Okay.
You might, yes, satisfy us. But at any rate, you lead up with the sense of expression. Let's go from there.
Okay.
One of Chopin's most famous melodies there. But let's see if we can make it even more expressive, Stephen, because in the D-flat major middle bit, there's Chopin reminding us that music is visual as well as being oral. And since we're being filmed, we can take advantage of this because, look, this D-flat major arpeggio, which you very cunningly played all with your left hand, in this first edition, which was published after Chopin's death, by the way, but nonetheless, probably followed the manuscript, they've put the top note in the right-hand stave. So just let's see what it looks like. Play it the way you did it, doing it all with your left hand. And so on. And now, let's see what it's like if, as I suspect Chopin might have done, you were to go da 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 do da da. See if it feels different. Entirely different. Because you are tempted, you see, to place it. Now, let's have a look at this famous tune. It's an interesting tune. Can I just sit here for one moment? If it hadn't been Chopin, I wouldn't be surprised if somebody could have written... could have done that. So you have your first phrase, and then you move on to your second phrase. But what Chopin actually does is... aha! Now, I don't want you to do the aha. I mean, don't let me spoil it. But play us that tune and be aware that that's a surprise. It's only a little accent. It's only a little accent, but it's da da dee 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 da. You're so loving it that you've got to go on. The important thing is to think, this is not what they're expecting.
Right.
Because we always have to pretend that you don't know anything. fancy harmony. I want to draw attention to a very interesting facet of this melody. We've got... Notice that? Da, 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 da. And then we have our surprise, and then we have da, 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 da. And what Chopin doesn't do, let's just... I'm going to demonstrate again what Chopin doesn't do. I'm not going to go boo this time. What Chopin doesn't do is this. That's why I'm not Chopin, really, I think. Now, so what he's got, he's going ta-dee-da-da-da, and then he thinks, I think I'll miss the next bar out, and I'll go back to... It's the same bar, but he does something different with it. And all I want you to do in a more flowing tempo is to think, here he's missing half a beat out, here, and so on, and communicate your sense of wonder at Chopin's brilliance to us all. So effective. Marvellous, yes. Beethoven's wonderfully expressive Moonlight Sonata. And sometimes we don't think of that as being a melody. We just think of it as being a texture. But in fact, if it were a melody, are there ways that we could use it to make the piece even more expressive by changing the time a little bit, by playing sooner and later and distorting the time? And I think there are. What I want you to try, Emmanuel, and this is a big ask, is I want you to play the tune without the accompaniment. Okay. And see how expressive it can be. But when I say the tune, no, I don't want the right, I only want the pum, pa, pa. So just play me that. See if you can make it expressive on its own. Good. Now, supposing that we didn't have to play strictly in time, you probably do accompanying. Yes. You accompany people. And you know what singers are like, shall we say. I mean, some of my best friends are singers. And a singer will perhaps move forward. Ta-da-da, ta-da-da-da-dee. So we would then need to accompany that. I tell you what, let's put the boot on the other foot. You've just played the tune. I'm going to be the tune. Okay. You play the accompaniment. So I go from here. So we're going to go, both hands. So I might want to do... I'm running out of breath. both of you get on.
Sorry, but you're going everywhere.
I know. I was going, well, I was deliberately doing it.
I
mean,
it.
It's lucky, of course, that this is not a vocal piece, but you see the point I'm trying to make. What I'd like you to do, I'm going to sort of do a bit of urging here from time to time. Let's just go from here and see if we can make it ebb and flow sooner or later. Now, let's go on and see what happens. Oh, lovely. Now we might want to move a little bit. Oh, sexy, yeah. That beautiful tune in B minor, has Mendelssohn given us any clues as to how to play some of the notes sooner or later, how to make the melody more expressive? Could you just play us, please, Cathy, the tune the first time that we hear it? And I'd like everybody to listen very carefully to the harmony. So just from here, thank you. Now, when that music comes back, there's a very significant different note. I'll give you a clue as to what it is. It's that note instead of that note. So Mendelssohn intensifies the harmony, and what he shows us at the moment that he intensifies the harmony is that he puts a sforzato. If you look at Mendelssohn's songs without words, you'll find that there's lots and lots of sforzatos. 3 times as many sforzatos as Chopin uses or Schumann uses. And it's a bit odd because sforzato means bang it a bit, does it not? And yet, surely Mendelssohn wouldn't have been banging it a bit. And it so happens that round about 1720, the harpsichord composers Couperin and Rameau had explained how harpsichordists can give the impression of an accent, because at the harpsichord, you can't bang a note out. And 2 of the ways that they mentioned were called the aspiration, which was when you go da 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 and you break off before you get to the note that you want to accent. And the other one was called the suspension, and that you not only break off but you delay the note, and that gives it an accent. So you go da 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 da, and that way at the harpsichord, although you can't play the note any louder, you can give it the effect of an accent. Now, of course, Mendelssohn wasn't a harpsichordist, but as I mentioned, he was a very great organist, and that's precisely the same strategy that you have to use at the organ. And so, Cathy, what I'd like you to do is to delay that sforzato, because we have a crescendo up to it, and then instead of marking the top of the crescendo with a particularly loud note, we'll just wait for a moment before we surprise everybody with that changed note. Let's go from there. And then we go on again. A simple tune from a Mendelssohn Song Without Words. And Elizabeth, I'd like us to investigate whether there are ways that we could make it even more expressive by changing the time, by playing sooner or later. And there's a clue that Mendelssohn has given us here. Look, this hairpin at the beginning of the tune, and it happens again there. There's an interesting difference, isn't there? The first bit of the tune, play us that first little section, it begins mezzo forte, and then there's a hairpin up. And then a line later, we get almost exactly the same thing, but it's already forte, it's louder, when it starts. Now, let's put it in context. We've had a lovely quiet introduction, and then we get this, and I'd like you to experiment with thinking that the hairpin means move ahead. Okay. Sort of setting it free to fly, and this to move ahead even more. So do us this beautiful soft introduction, and then when the theme comes in, it's sort of a bit more present, but not really loud, but moving forward. Now, I'm just going to interrupt you a moment because there's a couple of important things coming up, but there's also an interesting thing here. Let me just show you here, this bit that goes. because it has a very important difficulty. If we're going to change the timing of things, but we've got repeated notes, we have to allow our repeated notes to come and go with the melody. And I know it sounds very simple, but I remember once in the Ravel G major piano concerto, there's a beautiful cor anglais melody where the piano just goes twiddle, 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 twiddle. And the best way to do that is for the pianist to accompany the cor anglais. And I remember doing it once, and the conductor was trying to work out what my accompaniment was doing and then trying to make the cor anglais player fit in with my accompaniment, which was so entirely the wrong way around that it sounded terrible. So we're going to cut to the easy thing. You're going to play the beautiful tune as if it were Beethoven, and then you're going to allow your left hand just to go pom, 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 just as it wishes to, out of time if you want to. Again. We've learnt that the piano, in fact, can trick us into feeling that it's expressive, and that my deliberately saying, what can we do with this note? At the beginning, there's a note stuck. Of course, is not the case at all, because we can manipulate the gaps in between. We can manipulate the dynamic of the next note and so on. This is what Arthur Schnabel had in mind, the great German pianist, when he said, the notes I play no better than many pianists, but the gaps between the notes. And what we've spent this afternoon doing really is exploring the gaps between the notes at the piano. And we've seen how important they are in making these sounds expressive. And I must say that I'm extremely grateful to you five who have demonstrated the whole thing this afternoon. Sophie Lythgoe, Emmanuel Vass, Cathy Liu, Stephen Gearry and Elizabeth Caddy. Thank you all very much, and thank you for coming.